think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show, where we think, act, and prosper. Today I have Scott Melbye with me, and he is the CEO of Uranium Royalty, and you are also on the
executive vice president of Uranium Energy Corp as well.
Uranium Energy Corp. So these are UROY on the New York Stock Exchange and UEC on the New York Stock Exchange. So we're glad to have you here today with me.
Terrell, it's great to be on your program with your viewers.
Yeah, we talk a lot about uranium. We've been positioning ourselves for the bull market, obviously weathering the storms that we've went through in the last year. So it's been a process. Like, how's this been for you? And like, what are you encouraging? How are you encouraging your investors through the storms? And
yeah, I know. It's been a challenging time for various commodities. But commodities inevitably cycle. Uranium had one of the most severe down cycles, close to 10 years, with very low uranium prices and low equity prices. But as we sit today in 2023, we've seen almost a perfect storm of conditions come together. It's really the realization that in a green, clean energy, lower carbon economy going forward, we're going to have a significant component of nuclear power, and a broader realization of that globally. We've seen the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has shown a light on how vulnerable our energy security is, really national security, and then just supply and demand fundamentals that uranium is seeing that you would measure any commodity by. Those have never looked better in my 40 years of doing this.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you mentioned that the conditions are looking better, obviously we had like a big supply shortfall during the pandemic, and I know we've drawn down on some of the uranium that we've mined back in I think it was the 70s or whatnot. So where are we at with supply on a global basis?
Yeah, we're an industry that was really characterized by an oversupply of uranium for many years. So we had overproduction, we had inventories, secondary supplies, government inventories coming in. So we had, fairly decent, strong demand, although it was set back by Fukushima. But, that's the growth of nuclear power has resumed in earnest around the world since then. But we needed to work down that oversupply. And to give you an idea, with production discipline, with COVID, we have a deficit today where the world consumes about 195 million pounds of uranium annually, and we're only mining 143 million pounds. So we're drawing down 50 to 60 million pounds a year of inventories, and that's been the case for many years. But we're now getting to a point where those inventories are largely depleted, and we now need new mine production, and we need it in a hurry, which is why we believe that the uranium industry is going into a deficit or even a supply shock in the coming months and years.
Wow, yeah. That supply and demand is a basic factor of economics, and obviously it seems like we're at the point where the price has to go higher because of the continuous demand and the lack of supply. So there's always like this moral argument. Sometimes I find myself getting into these moral arguments with friends or whatnot when I mention nuclear, right?
Yeah.
So how do you approach just clearing up misinformation about uranium, nuclear energy, and because there's a huge moral case for it. I mean, and a lot of people around the world don't have the same access to energy as we do. Yeah. I remember a friend of mine. He's done a lot of mission trips to like Africa. Mm-hmm. He told me about one place he went to where the government pretty much they had a certain amount of energy. The government, they had, I think it was 4 weeks of energy per month, right?
Yeah.
The government took 3 of the weeks, and the villages had to share a week on, week off, you know, for energy. And so that was pretty interesting, you know?
Well, really, energy is basic to everything we do. In advanced, developed economies, it's the engine of economic growth. But in countries like India and places in China and elsewhere in Africa, there's probably 1 billion people on the planet that don't have any electricity at all. And that affects education. How can a child come home from school to a home that doesn't have indoor lighting at night, and study a textbook? And so it's just a cycle of poverty that's perpetuated by lack of energy. And certainly, there's health issues and medical issues with lack of energy. So we believe the world needs more energy, but we do believe that energy does need to be produced cleanly and safely. And it's great to talk about wind and solar as a safe and carbon-free source of energy, but it only runs 25 to 30% of the time. So if we're serious about clean energy and providing reliable electricity, we've got to do something about the other 70%. And that's where nuclear is really getting a new look now, because it is as safe and it is as clean as wind and solar, but it runs 95% of the time. And people say, well, Scott, how clean is it? Well, it's as clean and carbon-free as wind and solar. Safety, there are a lot of sort of misperceptions and fears about nuclear, but over the last 60, 70 years, nuclear power has been the safest form of energy, producing enormous amounts of energy with very few deaths or injuries as a result of that energy source. Certainly far less than what you see in coal or fossil fuels or other sources of energy. So I think we've just, I think we've got to do a better job of educating people, but I think they're beginning to realize that energy is about choices. There's pros and cons of each energy source. The pros that nuclear provides versus, I think, are pretty limited negatives or cons really are pointing to advanced use in nuclear. And that's why we've added 69 new reactors globally in the last 9 years. We have another 50 under construction. We're now seeing small modular reactors that can be the smaller versions, like they're like the reactors that power submarines and aircraft carriers. They can be used for desalination and hydrogen production, can run data centers, crypto mining, any industry that needs reliable energy, but needs it to also, or wants it to also be green and carbon free.
That's good. So, so we see the moral case for energy, just access to energy, is very important, and it's clean. That's very important as well, because we have a lot of nations, really wanting to focus on global warming and such, and obviously there's different views on that, right?
There's a debate on that, yeah.
But
we don't. The way I kind of frame it, rather than get in the middle of the man-made climate change debate, whether it is or isn't, all I know is that nuclear power is carbon-free and it's safe. So if your deal is just having reliable 24/7 affordable electricity, nuclear energy is for you. Exactly. If you really, if moving away from fossil fuels and having carbon-free energy is the primary driver for you, nuclear energy is the answer. So I think we really position ourselves. It doesn't mean that we can't have wind and solar. That'll always be a component of our energy mix, and it should be, but it can't be 100%.
Yeah, it can't be a base load where.
Right.
Yep. Gotcha. So, so tell us more about uranium royalty and uranium energy.
Yes, we have two companies that I'm involved in. Uranium Energy Corp is very much just straightforward, a uranium mining and development company with operations in Texas and Wyoming, and a growing presence in Saskatchewan, Canada. Why those places? Well, there's some of the best places in the world for uranium deposits and mining, resource development, but there are also good jurisdictions from, from political risk and mining laws. The world's getting more dangerous, not safer, with Russia and Ukraine, with China and Taiwan. And suddenly, uranium from stable jurisdictions like Canada and the United States look awfully attractive to consumers of uranium. So we're developing our hub and spoke operations in those two states. So the acquisitions that we made in Wyoming, particularly the Uranium One operations that were the famous uranium deposits, which were owned by the Russians as part of that whole Clinton scandal, those are now back in American hands. We acquired that for $114 million just months before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But for us, it gave us production-ready assets in the Powder River Basin. We took the last 6 months and really prepared the deposits and the operations for restart. So when we say they are production ready, we are now just waiting for a $60 uranium price to start injecting oxygen into the system and start recovering uranium. That's probably one of the most production ready assets on the planet right now. We also have the Burke Hollow and Hobson and Palangana hub and spokes in Texas, where also existing infrastructure, existing operations. We've expanded into Burke Hollow and building out those first production areas where they can be operational within a year. So the goal is to go to 1 to 2 million pounds in Wyoming, go to 1 to 2 million pounds in Texas, and ramp up as the market needs materialize to 4 to 5, even 6 million pounds a year in the United States. In the meantime, while we're cash flowing and producing in the US, we're developing our Canadian assets. And those were our other big acquisitions in the last 12 months of UEX and Rough Rider. The Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan is very different than the US. Those are ISR deposits, which are mined by in situ recovery, drilling into an ore body and producing the uranium in solution out of the ground. In Saskatchewan, they have the highest grade deposits in the world. These are where Cigar Lake, McArthur River are located, 100 times the world average ore grade. Well, we've got deposits in the eastern edge of the basin, near existing milling infrastructure at Rough Rider, deposits literally between McArthur and Cigar Lake at Christie Lake. So we're in the process of doing an economic study to look at whether we should build standalone mining and milling operations or work in conjunction with others in the basin in a toll milling fashion. But we need to go through those economic studies to begin to, hopefully develop those assets in conjunction with our operations in the U.S.
Okay. So if you could, so we're here at the Rule Symposium. If you could share, a nugget with the audience, you had to do some speaking the last couple of days. What's something that you could share with the audience, just kind of give them, insight into what's happening here and just what you presented on today?
Well, I think, the people that are here at the Rule Conference, I really enjoy this because they're very self-reliant people. They're very interested in investing, whether it's they're like you, earlier in their careers, or they're looking to invest for retirement or children's education. But they're all here to really learn about gold, copper, lithium, uranium, and investing in these industries. And I think resources, if you have the patience to be able to ride through the down cycles, be in position to be invested in the companies as those commodities inevitably cycle upwards, like we're seeing in uranium. Very significant wealth can be generated in these commodities, and they will continue to cycle, number of times through your lifetime. And if you understand the cyclicality of commodities and you're positioned appropriately, it's a really wonderful place to invest and generate wealth.
That's good. Well, thank you, Scott, for coming on. We appreciate your time. Everyone, please be sure to go check out the website. Where can people find the website?
Yeah, so uraniumenergy.com, and our royalty company, which is a royalty and streaming company, Uranium Royalty, is UROY, uraniumroyalty.com. But one is UROY on the NASDAQ, and the other UEC is on the NYSE.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
Great, thank you.